So everybody asks me, who is using mirroring? Because nobody wants to be first. And I need somebody to be first. So I'm glad and very pleased to tell you about 4 customers that are live in production using mirroring. Okay? The first one is MFS. MFS is considered to be the oldest mutual fund company in the US. Some claim that it's the oldest in the world. I find that a little bit hard to manage, but they're very old. They're based in Boston, and they currently do about $35 billion in transactions a year. They have 30 portfolio managers, so it's a smaller operation, but they have a very prestigious, very good quality funds. They're using mirroring live in their production environment for managing the systems that the portfolio managers use. So it's a very critical system that requires a lot of uptime, because anytime you go down, anytime the system is unavailable, they're losing a lot in transactions. In the US, the government provides 3 different branches of health services for specific types of people. One of them is the Veterans Administration, so this is for veterans that have retired. The other one is Department of Defense, and then the third one is Indian Health Services, which is for Native Americans spread out over the US. The one that is currently live is from the Winslow area. In Winslow, they have a couple of hospitals and several clinics. There's about 17,000 patients that are seen by Winslow. It's mostly the Navajo tribe. And they have inpatient and outpatient care, so they are up 24/7 by 365. They're using mirroring for high availability as we speak. Switching to a different industry altogether, we have a partner in Germany. It's a very small operation. It's about 20 people. They have been a Cache user for many, many, many years. It's called NewTek. They do an ERP system, warehousing, e-commerce, those sorts of things. They mostly sell to auto parts suppliers. There's one called Connex, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that. That's a very long name. Connex does auto parts distribution in Europe and also in Japan. And then there's this other one called Europart that does auto part distribution in Europe. So they're using mirroring live at both those sites, and they continue to add more. And last but not least, there's a healthcare example in the US. Kettering Health Network is an Ensemble end user. They use Ensemble to integrate all of their healthcare systems. They currently have a volume of about 500,000 messages per day, and they're using mirroring to ensure that this integration engine, which is very important, that brings data together from multiple systems, is very highly available. Okay? There's a very long list of customers that are currently planning to implement mirroring. You see them up here. There are a few that I would like to draw a few minutes of attention to. TrackCare, obviously, is our application. We're working very hard right now to, TrackCare is on an application upgrade path. Once they are on a version that supports mirroring, our goal is to use mirroring as the technology for TrackCare for all of the new sites. Indian Health Services continues to evaluate and implement mirroring at their other sites. So there's one called in Choctaw, there's one in Phoenix. There's 2 over here that are very interesting, Ipiranga and Petrobras. These are the largest. Petrobras is the largest oil company and petroleum company in Brazil. And Ipiranga is number 2. Ipiranga actually buys their petroleum from Petrobras. Both of them are Cache users. They use Cache for their critical oil distribution systems, and they are currently evaluating implementing mirroring for these systems. These systems are very critical for them, and they need to have very high uptime. The Veterans Administration is investigating using mirroring. That will be a very big step because they have some very large systems. and the list goes on. So there's a lot of interest in mirroring, and I hope that you will investigate it, play around with it, and ask questions, and then plan to use it in your environments as appropriate moving forward. Okay, topic number 2, cloud computing. Cloud computing. Okay, switching gears. What is the cloud? The cloud is defined by certain characteristics, and we'll look at some of these characteristics. First, the cloud is defined by having infinite computing resources. So there should not be a limitation on the amount of computing resources that are available in what is the cloud. Okay? Second, you should be able to, on demand, provision and allocate systems and resources when you want. Okay? So that's another characteristic of the cloud. Third, you should be able to pay for only what you use. Okay? You should not have to pay for systems to just sit there if you're not using them. Okay? That's the third main feature of the cloud. Fourth, the systems need to be elastic. And what does this mean? And how is it different from scalability? Scalability means just growing in one direction. Adding more, growing, adding more, growing. Being elastic means growing and then being able to shrink or reduce capacity. So if you want to increase capacity for a few weeks and then reduce capacity and then increase it again, you should be able to do that. And that's one characteristic of the cloud. Okay? It should be easy to manage. Management tools and utilities should be available for people to be able to configure and commission and decommission their systems. And the last characteristic is that it should be available via the internet. Obviously, I'm talking about the public cloud. So this sort of summarizes cloud computing. There are many different types of clouds. We won't get into any of those, but we're going to start looking at some of the real benefits of cloud computing and how we're helping. Okay? So the classic IT problem. You have on the x-axis you have time, and the y-axis you have cost, infrastructure cost. There's a line that's drawn, which is basically what we call predicted demand or projection. Everybody has a projection. So I expect that as time goes on, I'm going to have more and more customers, so I'm going to have higher demand. Okay? In order to be able to meet this predicted demand, I have to make sure I have enough equipment. I need to have servers that can handle this requirement. So I occasionally have to buy new servers and new equipment. So when I make that expenditure, it's pretty large. It's a large capital expenditure. Okay? Fine. I still want to try to meet my predicted demand. But the problem with predictions is that oftentimes they're not completely accurate. And actual demand can look something like this red line, okay? Where for the most part it's below your predicted demand, and suddenly it goes above your predicted demand, and it goes way above the predicted demand. Okay? This is a good situation to be in because you're selling more than you anticipated. But the problem is that when you're selling less than you anticipated, you have bought all of this equipment, and the gap here is what we call opportunity cost. You've already paid for it. That's okay. This is terrible. This is where you don't have enough equipment to meet your demand. So what happens? Your users get unhappy and they leave. They go somewhere else. Okay, so one possible solution is, we have the gray line with the predicted demand, we have the red line with the actual demand. What if you could have an orange line that was very closely in line with what your actual demand is? So this is the promise of the cloud. This gives you an opportunity to try to keep in pace with your actual demand. Okay?